While you're hunkered down and working remotely for the next 2 weeks, you might have some extra time on your hands because of canceled meetings, projects, or extended deadlines. Considering that, we have a special offer for you this week from us at Inside the Firm. Why not take that extra time and use it as an opportunity to reinvest in yourself and your small firm by finally purchasing Revit Rocket Chip at 50% off. That's right. Head on over to RevitRocketShip.com right now and enter promo code HOME50. That's HOME50, one word, HOME50, and start learning Revit today. In addition to learning, you'll also get our amazing residential template that's been honed in for over a decade to make you fast, efficient, and more profitable. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to RevitRocketShip.com right now and enter promo code HOME50 to start learning Revit today. Also, and speaking of profit, enrollment for the EntreArchitect Profit Workshop will end this Friday, March 20th, 2020. Please consider heading over to EntreArchitect.com/profit workshop and further reinvesting in yourself and your small firm today. Oh, hello. Fancy seeing you here on a Monday morning, but glad you could join us. Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week we will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their businesses to success in an ever-competitive business climate. So pour yourself a hot cup and enjoy the show.
Welcome to another episode of Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today I have a special guest. His name is Mark LePage, and he is the president and CEO of Gabl Technologies. He's going to have to correct me if I pronounce that incorrectly. And the founder of EntreArchitect, a global online platform providing resources, training, and community for small firm entrepreneur architects. And last but certainly not least, an architect/developer based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Mark, welcome to the show. Did I pronounce that incorrectly?
No, as Gabl Media, Gabl Technologies Incorporated. Absolutely. Super excited to be here, Lance. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's kick things off with that. If we peel back the onion a bit for us, how and when did you start your very first company?
Oh, my very first company. My very first company would probably be, other than lemonade stands and that kind of stuff. My father is a former auto mechanic, and he owned his own business, so he was an entrepreneur my whole life. And I started working for him when I was about 10, sweeping floors and that kind of stuff. And I would say probably my first real business where I was like doing marketing and, having customers and people paying me and doing a service was auto detailing. And so I started doing auto detailing at Dad's shop and Sunoco gas station. Painted a nice sign. I actually took the old gas pumps had these metal covers on them, and I took two covers from former gas pumps that he had replaced and painted signs on them, made like a sandwich board sign called Cruise In Car Detailing, and CRUZ-IN. I thought it was really cool.
That is cool. How old were you when that one started?
I was probably, when I first started doing that, I was probably 14 or 15 years old.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So that was my first entry into entrepreneurship. And that was super successful. I mean, I think about it all the time. I think I should just go back to doing car detailing. It was so profitable.
Oh, really? Well, I mean, it's just you and your labor, and there's probably not too many materials and tools and stuff like that. I know it's evolved quite a bit now. One of my neighbors is a car detailing enthusiast, and he's flying all over all the time, and he's always checking out new tools and everything. So maybe it's increased, but that's cool. Cool story. Did you always then consider yourself an entrepreneur because of that kind of success? Is that what drove you to that, or was it seeing your dad, do it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely in my blood, just sort of growing up that way. I never really identified it as entrepreneurism until later in my life. But, just having a mom and dad who were trying to run a small business and seeing what they did, and even as a kid sort of participating in that process of handing out flyers and, doing what you need to do to market the business and differentiate yourself. I never realized that's what it was, but, I didn't define my dad as an entrepreneur until I was older. I look back at that and I'm like, wow, he was an entrepreneur. After I was already an entrepreneur, I realized that, that's where it came from. And so it's always been part of me. And, when I decided to become an architect from day one, it was, the idea that I loved art and I loved to draw, but I also wanted to make money. So it just wasn't really an option back then. Although today, with the world, the way technology works and internet works, you certainly could build a business on being an artist. But back then it wasn't much of a business. And so as soon as I recognized what architecture was, I got in and I decided to become an architect when I was 10 and just never looked back, to the point where even in middle school, when you start taking those assessment tests to determine what you're good at, where you should, they sort of give you that you should follow, I made sure that results I answered the questions to manipulate the end results to make sure that it came out architect. So that's how determined I was to become an architect.
Yeah. I know some people have that. They really know from day one. I mean, day age 10, whatever that day really is. But so to speak, day one, you kind of have a beeline. For me, it was always just like I know it's construction, and then it kind of evolved and everything. So, did your first company? Do you think that obviously continued then to lead you to form the EntreArchitect series and community, and now Gabl Technologies?
Yeah. Well, let me give you the story about trying to lead into Gabl.
Please do.
My wife is an architect too, and I always wanted to have my own firm. As soon as when I was 10, I said, okay, I'm going to be an architect, and it was never an option to work for a big firm. And so I did, out of school, work for a bunch of different firms. I worked for URS Consultants, which is one of the biggest firms in the world. And I worked for a small firm, Barry Postganzer Architects, in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And then I went to Kyer, Garman and Davidson, KPF. No, KPF is a different company. Kyer, Garman and Davidson in Mount Kisco, New York. And I spent about 3 years there, which is a medium-sized firm. But as soon as I had my license, even before I had my license, as soon as Anne Marie had her license, we launched our firm. And we always joke that we are the perfect architects combined, because she loves design and loves architecture, and I could take it or leave it, but I love architecture and I love the business of architecture. It's part of me. It's part of my passion. And so I started writing a blog about it, just because I wanted to document what I was finding for myself, so I can go back and find it when I wanted to. And I wanted to start a blog, and that's what I started writing. I called it Entrepreneur Architect, and that's how it all started. There was a community that very quickly, that was in 2000, there was no other information on the internet about business and architecture, and it very quickly grew an audience. And that wasn't even intentional. It was just a personal blog, but that personal blog, people found it when they searched for business and architecture. And so that community started commenting on the blog. They, over the years, we built a community. That community said, you need to turn this thing bigger. You need to make this into a magazine or something. You need to do something with it. And so in 2012, I announced on the blog that I was going to do something called the 12 Project. It was December 12th, 2012 was my deadline. So I called it my 12-12-12 Project. And I invited other people in the community to have their own 12-12-12 projects. And I didn't tell anybody what it was. I just said, doing something that will change your life. So some life-altering decision, and will make the world a better place. That was the two we needed to do. And my launch EntreArchitect. And so on December 12th, 2012, it was also it also sort of my own accountability partner, because I thought of this for 3 or 4 years before I pulled the trigger on it. And so I set the deadline, December 12th, 2012. I launched Architect.com, as a platform for small firms and launched a podcast that same day. And I've been podcasting ever since and growing EntreArchitect ever since. That was 7 years ago. And it's grown. It's grown. The podcast has grown significantly. The platform has gone, a few products on the platform with some blogs to workshops that we do. We have a full membership where we have a mastermind group membership and a training and resource membership. And it's grown significantly to the point where it's my primary business. It's what I do. I still practice architecture with Anne-Marie. We do some small work, but my main focus is on EntreArchitect. I lived in New York my whole profession. This July, last year we decided to move from New York to North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. And we moved in July, and when I moved, that sort of threw all my corporate entities up in the air, because now I have New York entities, and so now I'm living in North Carolina. And so the architecture firm needs from New York to North Carolina. We're in the process of doing that. But also EntreArchitect was registered as an LLC in New York. New York's rules are if you're not a resident in New York, or your business is not located in New York, you can't hold it as an LLC in New York. So I had to dissolve EntreArch LLC, and I was forced to start a new entity in North Carolina. My recent plans in the last few years was to take EntreArchitect to the next level, because I want to grow way beyond me. I want it to be something bigger than me. And so my plan is to start something that could create some sort of platform for architects to practice on. So that's sort of the big term plan, is to sort of create some sort of professional practice platform where architects can practice. And thought, well, instead of just reincorporating EntreArch LLC in North Carolina, I'll launch this new company. And so I named it Gabl Technologies, and that's where Gabl came from. I left off the E because there was no Gabl with an line, and so I just dropped the E and made it Gabl, and so now the brand is Gabl, Gabl, and now Gabl Technologies owns EntreArchitect. So we're running EntreArchitect through Gabl, and we actually literally yesterday we launched our first new podcast on our new podcast network, Gabl Media. And it's called Build Your Brand Podcast. It's hosted by Jeff Eccles, a architect and marketing expert who would be also a great guest for your Monday morning coffee. And he and Demetrius Lynch, who is the creator and founder of Spaces podcast, who I hired as my creative director, so Demetrius and Jeff created the Build Your Brand podcast, and we launched it yesterday. It's all about branding and marketing for small firm architects. And so the plan is to have a whole bunch of podcasts on our network, and and continue to spread the word about how to build better businesses in architecture.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was you broke it down perfectly. I feel like you answered a lot of questions that I kind of already had in my head about it. No, seeing the growth of the EntreArchitect community, I think we got in touch with you maybe 4 or 5 years ago or something like that, and seeing the growth of the group, how positive it is generally in there, and how much people how much better it's made just small firm architects. I just can't stress it enough. We always try to pitch, hey, if you're not in that group, in that Facebook group, or you're not following it online, you don't have the newsletter, you're not getting the newsletter, you're doing yourself a disservice for sure. Because what you guys did is you filled a giant gap, a giant hole that just is not there. I mean, when you go to architecture school, you go for your professional degree, you have to take these graduate courses, these two credit courses basically, and that the business courses that were offered they're not real business courses. They're not entrepreneur kind of courses. What they are is they end up just going through like the AIA contracts, and a lot of people don't even use those anyway.
Yeah.
So, the kind of questions that come up again in that group and that get answered are the best. If you had to break it down, I know Gabl is brand new, but for the EntreArchitect community in your mastermind groups and stuff, what do you think your best, and without naming names, you don't have to, is what do you think your best client success story is in bringing somebody into that group and seeing them grow and expand because of what they've learned and shared in there?
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you, Alex, because you both have been such advocates for EntreArchitect community. You talk about on almost every episode of Inside the Firm, and I really appreciate it. I think the growth is absolutely, in addition to the work that we do, associated to the promotion that you guys have given it. So I really wanted to just stop and thank you for that.
Our pleasure. Absolutely.
So the greatest success story, I would say, and it's certainly not directly EntreArchitect. I'm sure EntreArchitect has had a part in it, but I would identify Marika McKeel and Studio, and she has been a member of the community since the very beginning. She joined one of our mastermind groups the day we launched it. She currently is now one of our mastermind facilitators, so she facilitates one of our working groups. And I have had the pleasure of watching her grow her firm from just her to I think she has a team of 5 or 6 people right now. She started by doing development work, basically custom homes in upstate New York in the lower Hudson Valley, and does beautiful work and has done a fantastic job promoting that work using social media. And I use her all the time as an example of how to start a firm from scratch, how to grow that firm, hiring people, and how to get the word out about what you're doing through social media. And she is a model of success, and I'm really proud to have been a very small part of it, but just to be part of watching her grow her firm has really been a pleasure.
That's one of the most rewarding things about starting any kind of business, I think, is whether it's helping employees grow in that way, or if, in your case, where you have a business that helps other businesses and watching them grow, you can make all the money in the world, but it just doesn't even compare to seeing people grow and flourish financially, professionally, personally. It's awesome for sure. What about
100%?
Yeah, it's the best. What is the worst? I don't know how you answer this. What is the worst client success story? What is something where you've seen maybe? I mean, just kind of it could be unexpected too. What is if there's anything that just kind of sticks out in the sense of it doesn't even have to be bad, but the opposite of that in some kind of way. Is there anything you could share?
Yeah, I think there are many architects that are sort of stagnant, that they join group architect or they explore other platforms, and they're sort of in this perpetual knowledge gathering process, and they never execute on that knowledge. And that they feel like they're making progress because they're consuming information, but they never use that information to get themselves to the next level. And I see that a lot. There are people inside and outside the membership who want to grow and want to be successful and want to sort of do what we talk about doing, but never really take the next step to do it. And some of that is just fear, which I totally respect. That's why it took me 3 years to launch EntreArchitect in the first place. And that fear every day stops me from pushing farther and faster than I really could. I absolutely respect the power of fear. But I think it's also sort of a comfort zone that you feel like you're making progress because you're consuming information and you're developing your knowledge, but you never really to push it beyond that.
That was perfect. Yeah, I think. I mean, that's such a great point. It reminds me of even some of the best designers that we went to school with. them confronting a blank piece of paper versus maybe me or Alex confronting a blank piece of paper were two totally different things. And, there's a book my wife has read recently that I just recommend to people that have that now, and it's the 5-second rule. I don't know what you recommend to people that have this problem of just constant knowledge gathering and never taking the leap. It's just a big hindrance. What do you recommend for people like that?
I don't have a specific book. That 5-second rule is a very good book. I use it actually for myself when I get really anxious and stressed out. I use a lot of the information that I gathered from that book. It's very helpful. I agree. Highly recommend it. But the book I always recommend is the E-Myth Revisited, but that's not a book that's going to get you to execute. It is a book that's going to sort of show you what you need to do to build a small business that works. And so I highly recommend that book, but that's not really a book that's going to get you to take that action. You can read that 50 times. I've read that book probably 12 times. I have 3 copies of it. I've given it away probably 10 times. But it took me a long time to execute on those ideas too. Read the book, and it's super exciting and it's inspirational, and you sort of put yourself in the position of that baker, and you want to do what she did or what he's telling her to do. But it's scary. There's a lot of fear in entrepreneurism because there's a risk. That's inherent in being an entrepreneur is risk. And so, just to watch what you guys did with your development, to follow along on your show, from day one, how transparent you have been about your development right up to now and all the things that you've gone through with the development. And I'm looking forward to the update on the result of it all, because I know it didn't all work out the way that you had hoped it. But just the fact that you were so transparent about it has been so inspiring to follow along and listen to that, and it's inspired me to want to do similar things here. And I've learned out of the lessons that you've taught on your show, so I appreciate that as well.
Well, I hope we didn't scare anybody away from it, from actually doing development, because.
But I think, though, Lance, is that yeah. Well, I think everybody knows and everybody knows that it's a scary thing to do. And I think what you guys have gone through is probably not atypical for your first project. First of all, it was a huge project to do your first development. Yeah. And that's one of the lessons I learned is that, I would love to do a project like that, but I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start with a house flip. I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to fix it up, I'm going to flip it. I'm going to do that a bunch of times, learn how to do that, and then I'll probably design and build a single family house and flip that. And then, maybe design and build another one and keep it as a rental. And, it's just sort of incrementally keep growing it. But the inspiration and the knowledge gained from what you guys have gone through gives me the courage to break through the fear of taking that first step. So,
okay, good. Because that was my fear. Looking back at all of that and kind of what we shared on our podcast was, man, I hope, especially with these last couple episodes where we basically said, no, we're just pivoting to builders for the next couple of years, because we just saw where the money is and the stress level and all of that. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, I want to hear more of the background on that decision. I want to, because that's what I'm waiting for on your show, is to hear the reasons for that switch. We can sort of gather that through some of the conversations that you had in past episodes, but to really dive deep in that, I think would be really interesting to hear. Yeah. That.
Well, at the end of the month, we're going to be on Enoch's show. And that's when it's going to sort of be, so he interviewed us very early, I think right when we bought the property and started got things off the ground. And we wanted to do a recap show because one of the questions we couldn't answer for him was, how did the numbers work? And now we know exactly how the numbers work and compare that.
That's going to be great. I look forward to that. Yep.
Yeah. So we'll break that down. I got another question for you. So you've been doing this for a while. We've already talked about the success of the EntreArchitect platform and what you've been doing for that and how it sort of grew into what you do now. But knowing what you know now, if you could give your former self any advice when you first started the EntreArchitect platform, what would that advice be?
That's a tough one because even now, as successful as it is, I still live day to day. It's not earning the income that I need to really be comfortable, and I have to do lots of different things. So the architecture firm has to stay alive and continue to practice. EntreArchitect has to continue to grow. I'm growing, and as it grows, so does the team, and so do the expenses. And so that's the thing that is difficult. It's probably not really a surprise because entrepreneurism is a risk, or entrepreneurial ventures are risky. But that's the thing I wish would be different. I wish that it would earn more money in order for me to not be living on the edge every month for the last 15 years. And that's just putting it out there honestly, is that it's been a long haul to build it into a business that does make enough money to support us, because it's our primary source of income right now. And which I'm really proud about, but it needs to continue to grow in order to grow out of that stage of what it is. And that's part of that. Part of the plan to make that happen is Gabl. That's why Gabl has been launched, and the podcast network has been launched. And what I hope Gabl Technologies will turn into is all part of that. The mission is from day one is to help small firm architects build better businesses, because when businesses succeed, the entire profession then thrives, and the architecture profession influences the world and has impact on the way the world works, and the way the environments that we all live and work and play in are all influenced by architects. So the more successful architects can be, I make a direct impact on the world, and that's how I look at it. And so Gabl, the plan for Gabl is to empower architects to make a better world. If we can create the resources and the tools and the platforms needed to help small firm architects, and maybe even larger firms as we grow them, if they can create the tools and the platforms that don't exist right now that we need to be better and to be more successful, that's what I hope to do. I hope to grow Gabl into the company that will allow the profession to practice more efficiently, more effectively, and for us to all do what we dreamed of doing when we decided to become architects. We all had this passion of wanting to design great architecture and to impact the world and make a difference. And it's hard to do that if you're struggling month to month. And I think a lot of us are struggling month to month. And if we can create tools and resources to help architects not struggle every month, but thrive, we'll not only make a better business, we'll be happier, healthier people.
Yeah, I agree. So on that note, then, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, I think it's time for me to finally take that leap, where should they go to check out? Obviously, I think started episode 1 of the EntreArchitect podcast, but then for Gabl, how do they sign up? Where do they go for that?
The holding company for EntreArchitect and Gabl Media. And so I would recommend that you go subscribe to EntreArchitect podcast and our new podcast, Build Your Brand, which is a 12-episode season. And so every episode will build upon the previous episode. We're actually exploring and talking about the success of a major brand. This season is Southwest Airlines. So Jeff is breaking down the brand of Southwest Airlines, how it is successful, what they're doing to be successful, and then taking those lessons and applying them directly to small firm architects. What can we learn from Southwest Airlines to make our individual firms more successful? And so every episode will build upon the last episode, and so it's like its own little workshop. in a 12 episode season. It would be really interesting to follow along that. So I would highly recommend that you subscribe to that as well. And then the best place to start at EntreArchitect is to join the Facebook group, the group that I talk about all the time, the EntreArchitect community on Facebook. It's a private group, only architects and architecture students. So we have really interesting, empowering conversations in there. It's a very supportive place. Probably, I always say it's the most successful, positive place on the planet for small firm architects because it is a protected place to have those conversations. EntreArchitect.com/group is a link that will go directly to there. You'll have to request membership. And as long as you're an architect or an architecture student, we'll say yes. And then you can come in and start having some really great, open, transparent conversations in there.
Beautiful. Mark, it's always a pleasure. I hope to see, I don't know if you're planning on going to the AIA conference or International Builder Show in the next ones, but hopefully we can catch up in person and have a drink or two. Thanks so much for being on. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Cool, buddy. Well, that was fantastic. I think we have one episode ahead of yours, so probably 2 Mondays from now. But I'll tag you in the group and share it around. And I'm going to check out that new podcast. I've been seeing all the stuff on LinkedIn, and it looks fantastic because I really, that's one of the things you probably noticed Alex does is like he'll read a book about like Steve Jobs or something, and then he thinks how we can apply that to F9. So what a great idea. You guys are onto something. Yeah. Well, it was all Jeff and Demetrius. I just basically said, let's do this. Jeff and I said, let's make this thing happen. And Demetrius, I really like what he's doing at Spaces. And so I said, Demetrius, Jeff, go do your thing. And that's what they created. And so and I'm super excited about it. Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. All right, man. Thank you very, very much for the invitation. I appreciate it. And I look forward to hanging out with you guys.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on the iTunes app. Tip your barista, and we'll see you next week for more Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm.